artificial intelligence labs for a company called Course 5 Intelligence. We are a data science, AI analytics, and insights company. Ashwin Mittal, my boss, our CEO, was supposed to be with me. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, so I'll do this entirely by myself. The way I've structured this is there are 3 sections. Initially, I'll talk a little bit about AI labs, what we do, just so that you get a perspective of where we are coming from. Then I'll talk a little bit about the key lessons learned that we've learned as part of our journey. And then finally, I'll talk about some best practices that we recommend. So why did we choose this topic? As a data science, analytics, insights company, a few years back, we embarked on a journey of R&D-focused innovation. And that's when we started building our AI labs. And during this journey, we've had some lessons learned. And we thought that the kind of lessons that we have learned in our journey can actually be beneficial to a lot of people out there, data science companies or otherwise, anybody who's interested in building core AI stuff rather than just a few solutions here and there. So this, I'm hoping that this will actually add value to your knowledge. So first of all, a brief idea about what Course 5 is. As I said, we are a data sciences, AI, analytics, and insights company. Been in business for 20-odd years now. And that's the overall company. We are about 1,200 globally. And largely, we have had a services side. And past few years, we've moved on to product development as well, AI product development. So why did we set up our AI labs? There were essentially 4 points. Those were the triggers for us. In different parts of our organization, we were already involved in major innovation programs. We were doing major innovation programs. So we wanted to consolidate all of that. And that was the #1 reason why we wanted to just consolidate our programs, our innovation programs, have a more centralized, focused approach, get in a proper innovation strategy and R&D strategy in place. And that was our #1 reason for doing this. We also wanted to focus on R&D-led innovation, not incremental innovation, but rather our focus area was on radical innovation, architectural innovation, really something which can help us launch disruptive products and lead to inorganic growth. So that was really what we were focusing on. Additionally, there was at least one area where we wanted to go big. We knew AI could actually transform that particular industry, which is the market research industry, and that was a strategic bet for us. We wanted market research industry. For those who are here, you would know it's still a kind of old school. It's still done in the old school way. We wanted to use AI to actually come out with a product that can disrupt that, and that was a strategic bet. And along the same lines, we also wanted to make sure that we figure out what else can we do. So what we wanted to do was get in ideas from different areas of our organization internally, from customers and stakeholders externally, try out those ideas, qualify them, see what makes sense to build, see what doesn't make sense to build, do a lot of market evaluation and see if some products can actually be disruptive enough. And that was essentially, we're talking about a strategic discovery. What we can discover that can change the landscape within the domain that we operate in the next 4 or 5 years. And we actually have a couple of products there that we've identified on which we are going big today. So those are primarily the reasons. Now as a company, if you guys are, if somebody, let's say, wants to build an AI lab, you may have a different reason. For us, this is why we went there. Wanted to build an AI lab. But again, I'm sure whoever wants to start building and investing in an R&D center, in an innovation center, some of these reasons that I have mentioned would stay the same. So this is a small journey. In 2016, we did a soft launch. 2017, we did a full launch. That's when I joined the company to lead this. We had a gradual expansion phase between late 2017 and first half of 2019, and now onwards we've broadly identified what we have to do in the next 5 years, and we are going all out right now. Now, AI is an umbrella term. I'm sure all of you who've been part of this conference, you've been AI. I am a core technologist. I still code. I still build AI models. So there is nothing really called AI. There is NLP, NLG, computer vision, machine learning, automated scheduling, a whole lot of other technologies, and all of them are at different stages of their maturity cycle. So when we say AI can do this, AI cannot do this, we really have to specify which particular aspect of AI we are talking about. From our, from our perspective, we wanted to focus on very specific areas of artificial intelligence, and those are the areas that you see today. The ones that you see, which are kind of, which are in bold, are essentially areas where we are probably investing a bit more. We want to get more into these areas. For instance, computer vision and emotion AI, and a lot of these engines, these technologies I'm talking about are either part of our solutions or part of our products. Similarly, there is something called natural language generation, which is actually one of the more advanced areas within the NLU, NLP space. We are focused on that. There are not a lot of players out there. So broadly what I'm trying to say is we've identified the scope of AI since it's pretty huge, and we've narrowed down on some cases. There are areas like robotics, machine, motion and manipulation, automated scheduling, a lot of other areas within AI, automated driving. We are not going into all of that. We just identified our battles, what we want to fight, and we are going all out there. So again, when you're trying to build an AI lab, you have to make sure, or any innovation R&D lab for that matter, you have to make sure you know your focus areas rather than spreading yourself too thin. So this is our approach of productizing AI. We look at AI, we look at what open source material is out there today. And there's a lot of open source material. What fundamental research is out there today? Companies like Microsoft, Google, FAIR, Facebook AI Research, they actually share all the, not all, but a lot of the fundamental research that they have as part of their organization. They make it publicly available. So we see what fundamental research, what open source materials already out there, what technologies are out there. And then we identify whether we can actually, we try and figure out whether we can actually use them for our use cases and then build on top of that. Sometimes we find those areas that exist and then you can build on top of that. Sometimes you do not. For a lot of cases, for instance, I may just have to do research and build algorithms from the scratch, my team and I. We are about 60 today as part of AI Labs. Overall as a company, we are about 1,200, but within AI Labs, we are about 60 today. So we actually go back to the table and see what is it that is not available, but we'll have to create. And that's really our IP from an AI perspective. The other thing that we do is, once we build the base for developing the AI models or anything, then we transform them into products. So as of today, we've got, I won't go into the details, we've got 4 flagship products. These are all AI products. They all do different things. Their target segment, their target markets are different. But broadly, as I said, we have developed the IP. In many cases, our own IP, we patent a lot of stuff. And once we develop the IP along with what we have developed and along with what's available in the open source area, we try and build products out of them. So as I said, we started in 2016, and it's been almost 4 years. In the next few months, it'll be almost 4 years. So there are obviously a lot of lessons that we've learned as an organization, and I think it makes sense for us to share that. So around the strategy piece, does it go back? Okay. Around the strategy piece, the first thing, when any company is building a new R&D setup or a new innovation center or a new AI labs, the first question you should have is the trade-off between isolation and integration. How much should your new organization be part of the rest of your company? And this is a tricky question. It's actually a philosophical question, but it also boils down to the organizational DNA. Because when you're starting on a new R&D center, a new innovation center, your goal is inorganic development, inorganic growth. Whereas the rest of the organization, by and large, is generally focused on meeting the quarterly P&Ls, more tactical gains, and organic growth. Largely, this is what happens. So there has to be a balance between how much you allow this organization to be affected by the rest of the company. From our standpoint, what we've learned is any new R&D setup has to operate at the edge of the organization. It should not be totally isolated, but at the same point of time, you have to give it the creative freedom. You have to have separate policies and processes around it. You have to manage it in a different way. So in our company, for instance, AI Labs is a different arm. It's not part of any of the other business units that we deliver and we help, we partner with. So it's just a different center altogether. It's our R&D hub. The other thing is that you'll have to understand that investments and output may not be in proportional, at least in the initial stages. You invest money, and then traditional linear models, when you invest something, you expect in 3 years, 5 years, you will break even, depending on the AI technologies that you're using, and depending on the use case and other things. There could be a time when you can pump a lot of money in the first year, but you don't really see very optimal results, from the second year onwards, because any advanced technology will move in a non-linear way. For 1 year, 1.5 years, you may not really see anything, and all of a sudden you'll see a spike, a jump in what that technology has brought to you. What we suggest is, whenever you are doing something around innovation, and I'm talking about radical and architectural innovation, disruptive innovation, not incremental, plan it in a phased manner. Don't have a big bang approach, because A, you don't want your focus to get diluted, and B, you really want to go deep into a particular area. That's really key in any kind of success. So if you look at all the major companies in the world that have actually done something, whether it's Apple or Salesforce, they brought something to the industry. They've all gone deep into a particular area rather than spreading themselves too thin. The other thing is the gestation period for any new function will be long, and this is much more true for AI-based development. It's not that you get a couple of people today, you get 5 AI scientists, all PhDs from foreign universities, and in the next 8 months you can come up with something, a great AI product. Things take time. Many of the technologies that exist today in the form and manner that they are today cannot be actually utilized for building very specific use cases. You have to do a lot of tuning, optimization, modeling. Data is another factor. I'm sure you're aware of all of this. What I'm trying to really say is there will be the lead time to bring an AI product, a path-breaking AI product into the market can actually be high than what you may calculate. And then finally, you cannot build everything on your own. You cannot deliver everything on your own. No matter how big a company you are, all the top talent, they're not going to work for you. So you will really have to leverage the external ecosystem. And I have another point on this, maybe at a later stage I'll talk about it. So essentially, the thing is, you cannot do anything on your own, period. When you're really looking at radical innovation, you have to leverage what's being done in the industry, what your partners are doing, even what your customers are doing. The next is about people and organization, what we've learned. Again, when you set up a new innovation function, it's not very easy to graft them into existing organizational alignments. There are organizational dynamics. There's always politics that's going on. There are a lot of things that you'll have to care about. So whenever a new organization comes up, something that's focused around long-term innovation, around something very disruptive, you'll have to figure out a way. Each company has to do it their own way. How do you make that organization, that new setup, work with the rest of the businesses, but at the same time make sure that organization does not get affected by the system. I mean, it is there to change the system, not really to be changed by the system. The other thing is leadership involvement and appreciation of challenges that are there in the AI field is extremely critical. You'll hear a lot of hype about AI all the time. So what any organization should do is try and understand the boundaries of AI, the limitations of AI. Just knowing that this is AI doesn't really work. You have to get into the specific area within AI, understand what it can do, what it cannot do today. Because if your entire planning, if your entire approach is based on something which may not even exist today, you are bound to fail. And top leaders in the company, they have to understand this bit, because at the end of the day, it's the board, it's the company management, the executive team that's actually driving the investments into this. So that's, to my mind, this is possibly the most critical factor whenever you start an R&D and AI function. Also, your traditional business and sales teams may not always be optimal to sell AI products. There is always typically when you start building new products, and let's say today you've launched a new AI product, more often than not, you would use your existing sales teams and business teams. But again, this may not be a very optimal thing. So as an organization, you'll have to look ahead. You have to see what product you're going to launch in 2020 or 2021 and see whether you have the appropriate sales and business dynamics in place to help you with that. Also, there has to be a lot of flexibility in hiring and retention practices. AI talent, they come at a very, very high cost. And a lot of them are, kind of creative people. They would want to work in a different way. So you have to have your HR policies in conjunction with the kind of people that you would want, because again, the way you have operated as an organization, the way you operate for the rest of the company, you possibly will not be able to do much if you take the same infrastructure or the team structure that you have and apply it here. And finally, we can't talk about AI without talking about the technology bit. The most important thing that you'll realize is the pace of AI innovations that is actually happening today. Just to give an example, again, just talking about some technical terms here. In 2017, we were doing something called bidirectional LSTMs, which is a form of deep neural networks. And we were thinking this is state of the art, as if we have won the Nobel Prize. We were really pretty happy doing that. 2018 end, we started doing something like bird transformers and other transformers, which became state of the art. So what we had to do between 2017 and 2018, late 2018, early 2019, was actually prepare our people to be able to understand the different architectures that come in. In the traditional engineering space, analytics space, you would work on a particular architecture, on a particular model for maybe 5 years, 6 years at a stretch, but I do not have that luxury today. Almost every month, there are some serious research papers, applied research or fundamental research, some serious work that's getting shared by the open source community within the, within the AI space. So which ones do you want to latch on to, which ones do you want to leave? I mean, there are a lot of questions that you have. So you have to be really ready, and it all starts with here, to be able to adopt, to be able to adapt yourself to this accelerated pace of change. The other thing is, most of us, there are a lot of companies out there, and they all say, use our AI system, use our platform, use this, you can do everything with it. That's actually not true. Closed ecosystems possibly have some short-term advantages because they help you get off the ground quickly. But as somebody who's been doing this, there are issues. If you really want to focus on building AI products or AI systems that you have to run in production environments, not just as a POC, you actually have to show utility. You have to look at open source technologies. Initially, there could be a slight delay in adopting them compared to your using a closed ecosystem, but then the long-term benefits are immense. Also, what closed ecosystems do is, when you use them, there's a lot of technical dependencies that you're also creating, which you don't realize unless you've been doing that. You don't realize until it's a few years from then. The other thing is AI infrastructure planning can actually be complex. You need servers which cost maybe 50 lakh, 60 lakh rupees, and and only one person is probably going to use those servers. They're pretty expensive. Even if you use cloud, they're pretty expensive. So some of these aspects that I'm talking about are actually a bit granular. But as I said, as an R&D, if I am building an innovation center, an R&D center, I have to consider all these points. I have to think about them. I have to take them into my account when I'm actually strategizing, even before I build out my AI lab. And finally, this point I mentioned earlier, account for the nonlinear nature of AI development. There will be months you'll probably not see much output. You just keep doing it, and all of a sudden, your AI system does something remarkably well. So now I'll just talk a little bit about the best practices that we recommend. Again, this is from our perspective. It's not that whatever I'm mentioning actually would work for everybody, but this is the broad. I've tried to generalize as much as possible. In some cases, I will talk about what we are doing within an organization so that you can get a feel of what I'm talking about. So the first thing that you'll have to do is, you have to develop your own enterprise AI and R&D strategy. You cannot start putting money. You cannot just start hiring people. You cannot do anything till you get this part right. Maybe you won't get it right for a couple of years at least, but you still have to have an initial strategy based on which you're developing. So what do I mean by strategy? I'll give you our example because I thought that's the best way to explain. For instance, we have a 6-point AI R&D strategy. We focus on very narrow use cases, but whatever narrow use cases we are taking, we are not trying to solve the world's problem. There are some industry problems that we understand because we have domain expertise. We are focusing only on those use cases, and we are going very deep into them because we believe there is a lot of money there. If we can solve those problems, we will end up with a lot of revenue just by solving those problems. The other thing is we are not looking, as I mentioned, we are not looking at everything else in AI. We are just looking at very specific areas. The second thing is we have a high focus on next-gen IP creation, not just what is going to work today, but also what's going to work tomorrow. If I am building for what I'm going to sell today, then I'm really fighting yesterday's war, right? Ideally, I should start building for 2020, 2022, 2023, which we are doing. So as an organization, as an R&D and innovation hub, as an AI hub, this is what you really need to focus on. The important thing here is next-gen IP. Just creating IP which is of use today will possibly not be of much help. We have an open innovation strategy with both academia as well as the industry. For instance, we collaborate with academia on joint projects, on IP sharing and a lot of other things because we want to build for the future, and these are certain long-term projects. We also work a lot with startups and accelerators and all of that. And again, this is not something out of the ordinary. I'm sure a lot of out here you may be doing it as part of your company work today, but this is something you really have to focus on because again, you cannot be building everything in AI all by yourself. We have a high focus on reusable AI development. So when I build a new AI solution or a new AI product, I build that platform agnostic in a way that can be applied to any new solution in future as well. So the goal is not just to address today's problem, but also make it in such a way. And this is where your experience in doing this kind of a work comes in. So your people have to have enough knowledge about how to make something which is specific for your problem, but also make it in such a way that it can be used in the future as well. And also there's a lot of focus on our side to move on to early AI technologies. For instance, there are a lot of companies which are still dependent on supervised learning, but we've moved on to unsupervised and reinforcement learning. I mean, those are some examples, some small examples, but broadly what I'm trying to say is, again, if you look at each of the technologies within AI, each of them have their own maturity cycles. So depending upon where you think your company fits in, your vision fits in, you have to take those technologies. For us, we focus a lot on getting into our technologies at an early stage so that we can benefit from its evolution. And finally, there's a lot of structured focus on data governance, which includes data security, privacy, because security, to my mind, is going to be really huge. Privacy is another thing. AI interpretability is another thing. So data provenance, I mean, these things all become part of your data governance. And today, in the data economy, you really have to make sure you're using your dark data as well, which is a data in your organization that nobody cares about today. 90% of an organization's data is dark data. So you really have to have a focus around using that data and end-to-end governance of that kind of data as well. The other thing that we want to talk about is that we recommend is essentially focus on talent management. And when I'm really say focus on talent management, really focus, not for the sake of saying. You really make sure you're upgrading the skills of your team members. Recruiting and retention, as I said, you cannot have the same strategy that you've had for the rest of the company if you're really focused on building a high-end AI lab. You have to have different approaches. There has to be a continual skill development, and by continual skill development, I do not just mean ask them to do an e-learning course and then they do it and then go home and forget about it. You really have to have concrete workshops, something that can actually add value to there, and then you build your projects around, around the skill development that you're doing. And finally, I keep mentioning this again and again, build your external ecosystem. Build your ecosystem. Have people talk to academia, the IITs, the IISCs, IISC, ISIs, or any of the academia outside of India. Talk to them and build an ecosystem. Get their professors to work with you. Help them, in your journey. The next thing you two need to do is, make sure you're developing a pipeline. I know of a lot of companies, what they do is, they'll possibly have 2 ideas, they will just use those ideas, they'll put them to use, they'll try and build some POCs, and if they're not successful, they will forget about it and then go back. You shouldn't have that. You have to have a steady pipeline of ideas that you have to have a mechanism to constantly qualify them. When I say qualify them, what I'm really trying to say is you try and test those ideas, at a very small level maybe, but you try and test those. So you build your pipeline. For instance, for our company, I know what I'm going to build for the next 3 to 5 years. The plans are already in place. Maybe there will be some tuning needed, but they are still there. Maintain a progressive but balanced technology strategy. This is important. Every time we hear about a new technology, there are usually 3 kinds of people or 3 kinds of companies. One, they wouldn't care. They'll just look at a technology and they'll go all out, just to use the technology on one end of the spectrum. Other end of the spectrum, you'll have a lot of people who will be skeptics. No, this is just a hype. And then there will be those sort of people in somewhere in between who would possibly be more, have some common sense and, use, just pick up those technologies that will actually help them. This is really important. I mean, all of us are dependent on technology today. For instance, I know a lot of companies that went all out on the Bitcoin stuff, right? And today it's illegal in many companies. And I know a lot of companies that have lost money. Investors have lost money. So, you really need to have some common sense around some of these things when you start investing. The other thing you need to do is you need to transform your company to prepare for the AI age. You cannot just have one end doing high-end AI work, R&D work, and then the rest of the company is not really doing much. In our company, for instance, what we've done is we've trained our top leadership, our middle leadership, as to what AI is all about. Just to differentiate between the hype and the noise. You just want to capture the signal, right? So this is something that you will have to do as an organization. You have to make sure people know what AI, again, there's nothing called AI, it's the individual technologies, what they can do and they cannot do. And really that's very important, because unless the business understands, you won't go too far. You will not be able to sell, you will not be able to come out with those product ideas. Focus on innovation diffusion. So just having an innovation lab, R&D lab, and saying, we are building this is not enough. Whatever you are building, are you able to transfer those innovations to the rest of the company? Are you able to use those innovations for the benefit of your customers? Some of you may not be, some of those customers may or may not be linked to the products that you're selling, that you're building here, right? How do you diffuse that innovation? How do you transfer that innovation over to the industry or to the rest of your organization? That's really very critical. And this is the last part, develop your organizational AI foresight. And this is where you really need serious thought leadership on AI. So what do I mean by foresight? I'll just explain what we are doing here. So you have to understand, you have to know what's going to be key over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not going beyond that period. For instance, this is just an example. This is a very small list of what we believe at a very high level is going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of POCs, and this is not related to just our company, but globally, and accordingly we are building our strategies and we are trying to align our strategies to do this. For instance, conversion of AI prototypes and POCs into full-fledged enterprise AI products. So there is a market out there that's increasing. Major advances in specific areas where we operate. Consolidation of the AI vendor market. There are challenges, there are opportunities, and really, increase in domain-driven AI. So I don't want to go through this deal. This list is just an example. There are a lot. So as an organization that's really focused on creating long-term shareholder value, you need to be able to predict how AI is going to evolve. And accordingly, you finalize your business strategies along with it. You will not always get the predictions right, but by and large, if you've done this for a long period of time, you'll get it right. At least 80-90% of the times you'll get it right. So that's it. Any questions? Would be happy to answer. Excuse me.
Also, can you please stand up so we'll cover you on the camera?
Hi. I'm Ravi Teja, and I'm the research lead for natural language understanding in Genpact. Listening to you is almost like looking at a mirror in many of these things, but I'll get to the question. Thankfully, I'm part of an organization that understands the importance of R&D-led innovation, but at some point of time, right, I need to take ownership and provide quantifiable and measurable estimates. Like, how do I attach monetary value to the work that I'm doing?
So there are two ways. Typically, if you look at organizations like Bell Labs or any of the R&D hubs globally, there are two ways to do this. One, you have specific output. For us, those output is those products that we are building, right? The other thing is what we also do is build a lot of accelerators, engines, frameworks, which our solutions guys, the guys who are actually deliver client solutions, are using them. So that's another way that we measure and the revenue coming from that. And the third thing that you measure is in terms of productivity. For instance, if I am building something and I have built a system and I have diffused the system to the rest of the organization, has that system, what kind of efficiencies I have gained? So there are ways and methods, and again, this is not our approach. These are any global R&D hub that actually does these kind of things. They use this approach, and we use the same as well from our side.
Thank you so much, Tamal, for that very interesting session.
Thank
From
you so
Thank
much.
you for your time. Thank you.